Hello, sir. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. So how are you doing tonight?
Good, thank you. How about you?
I'm doing well.
Mm-hmm. Well, I wanted to contact you because I have a project for my school called National History Day, and it's kind of like science fair but for history. And my topic is on the polio vaccine and how it has affected millions of people worldwide. My mom is a Rotarian and she is friends with Dr. Z, and she told me that she had the contact of a polio survivor. And
Right.
well, yeah, I wanted to reach out to hear your story and your opinion on the vaccine and polio in general.
Sure. So you did some work already about polio, so you know it's a
Hmm.
virus, right?
Yeah,
Okay. And it's a virus that attacks the central nervous system.
yeah, and the
And
lungs too.
so, right. Well, what happens is because it attacks the central nervous system, your messages from the brain doesn't go through the rest of the body.
Hmm.
And so what happened, most kids that had polio got it before the age of 2.
Hmm.
And it started paralyzing the kids to the point where their lungs didn't know to breathe, which is why
Hmm.
they had to go to an iron lung.
Yeah, an iron lung, assisted
Yes,
breathing.
right. And that they helped them breathe. Now, because most kids got it before the age of 2, they don't remember what it was like. With
Hmm.
me, I got it at the age of 6. I
Oh, so
was,
you
I,
have like a recollection.
I know, I remember exactly what was happening to me when it happened.
Hmm.
And it was in the 1960s. So the vaccine was already out. But for
Hmm.
whatever reason, I was not vaccinated.
Oh.
And so, um, and the way it started with me was I would be walking or running, and then I'd just fall down for no
Oh.
reason at all, fall down. And I'd get up and I'd walk around again, and I'd just fall.
Hmm.
And by within 24 hours, I was paralyzed from my neck down. Like all I could move was my head from side to side.
Hmm.
And um, they, I was transferred to the hospital, and the doctors told my parents that I was not expected to live because it was so advanced. And
Hmm.
at that time, because it was in the early 60s, they'd already they didn't have iron lungs readily available.
Hmm.
So um, they just kind of had to wait for it to start receding. And with polio, the it, however far you advance, whether with me I was paralyzed from my neck down, and then it starts reversing itself, and no
Hmm.
one knows how far it's going to reverse. So, which is why you see some people that had polio and they may walk with a limp. Other
Hmm.
people with polio are like me, where I'm in a wheelchair and my muscles begin to be affected from just below the heart down.
Hmm.
And so um, we didn't know how much functioning I would get back.
Hmm.
And I was hospitalized for like almost 9 months. And it took a long time for it to get to a point where I could go home.
Hmm.
And at that time, people with disabilities were not readily acceptable in the community, much less in school.
Yeah.
And so they were the case managers and the nurses and everyone were trying to talk my parents into sending me to an institution.
Oh.
And
So you had to receive
fortunately,
different education.
that's right. Well, fortunately,
Hmm.
my parents refused to do that,
Hmm.
and I was at home. I have 3 brothers and 3 sisters, so I have a big family, and I did go to special school in North for kids with disabilities for the
Hmm.
second grade and third grade. Well, second, third, and fourth, I guess. Um, but then that school closed down.
Hmm.
And so they were saying, again, I had to go move. go to an institution somewhere else in the state. And my mother was insistent on having me go to public school,
Hmm.
but public school did not want me. And so they my mother just upped and enrolled me in school without telling them that I was disabled.
Hmm.
When they found out I was disabled, they tried to
Reject
kick
you?
me out.
Hmm.
Yeah. And but my mother prevailed and I got to go to public school
Hmm.
and from like fifth or sixth grade on, I went to public school.
Oh,
So
okay.
um but that's kind of how this whole thing started is
Hmm.
with the virus, you don't know how it's going to affect the body. I do know that had I had the vaccination, I probably would not be in a wheelchair today.
Yeah.
So
And
what else do you want to know?
where was a hospital that you were admitted into?
Oh, I lived in Wisconsin, and
Hmm.
so it was Children's Hospital, which was a teaching hospital.
Hmm.
And so a lot of interns would come in and see me, and I'll tell you, it was extremely painful.
Hmm.
Um, when they worked with you to try to get usage back
Hmm.
because of the paralysis, it was just very, very painful all the time. And I remember that being painful. And what I had to do is I had to lay on my stomach and my feet had to be at the bottom of the bed between the mattress and a wooden board. And the intent was to keep my heel cords stretched so that
Hmm.
if I was going to walk again, I could walk.
Yeah.
But to keep me from turning and getting out of that position,
Hmm.
they put a vest on me that tied me down to the bed. So I couldn't move. And so I was literally tied to the bed.
Oh, wow.
And it was horrible. It was just
Hmm.
horrible.
Yeah.
And so I spent a lot of my day trying to undo the straps so I could move, but every time I did that, they came back in and tied it tighter.
Oh.
So, but a lot of the therapy that I went through was um, aquatic, so it's like whirlpool
Hmm.
type therapy, physical therapy. I went through the entire second grade in the hospital.
Hmm.
So tutor that came in to work with me. For the longest time, I was in isolation,
Hmm.
and then I went into a ward, and a ward. I don't know if you ever seen Forrest Gump, but
No, I haven't.
okay. Well, in the hospital, they have these wards, and it's usually like 6 to 7 beds of kids that are in this big room.
Hmm.
And um, when the doctors came around, they would visit all of them, but with me, because I was polio,
Hmm.
uh, what they did, they spent a lot of time with me and they kept drawing on my body. So just imagine taking a magic marker or a Sharpie
Hmm.
and they just wrote on my body
Oh,
and
wow.
they would describe, these are the muscles affected here.
Hmm.
I was like a chalkboard,
Oh,
and it was, again, not a very pleasant experience.
yeah.
But what I did get back, I had to wear long leg braces. And long leg braces are just that, they're um, a brace that have a shoe at the bottom and that just wraps around your leg all the way up to your thigh.
Hmm.
Uh, I would walk with those and with crutches. Um, and I did not like those braces at all. I mean,
Hmm.
it was extremely uncomfortable. It was very awkward. Um, you know, I didn't like being the standout, because
Hmm. Yeah.
people would see me and they'd know I'm different.
Hmm.
And so I mean it was just one of those where I wanted to be like everybody else,
Yeah.
but wasn't. And so eventually when I graduated from high school and went to college, I talked my doctor into doing short leg braces, which would um, basically keep my foot upright. Because what would happen is I have no muscles in my feet, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
my foot would drop down. And so when I walk by hiking my hips because I don't have the muscles to just walk naturally. And so I would hike up one leg and swing it forward, and then hike up the other leg and swing it
Mm-hmm.
forward. And that's how I would end up walking. And the brace kept my foot up so I wouldn't trip over it.
Yeah.
So
And
uh,
you mentioned physical therapies and the braces, and but how long did you have to use them for, or go through, or how long did you have to go through physical therapy for?
well, therapy, I went through that, oh, probably 4 years, 5 years, um, to get released from the hospital. My mother had to be taught the therapies that I would need.
Mm-hmm.
And the doctors made it sound like this was really a complicated process. And it really wasn't. And so when I got home, my mother taught my 8-year-old brother and 9-year-old sister how to do my therapy. And they did
Mm-hmm.
the therapy from then on. But when I went to the public school, the orthopedic school, the special school that I talked about, um, they had therapy there. So you just leave your classroom to go to therapy for an hour, come back to your classroom type of
Mm-hmm.
thing. And so that continued until I started going to public school,
Mm-hmm.
and then that stopped. So um,
And when you did have like the doctors do your physical therapy, was it like included in health insurance, or did you guys have to pay out of your own pocket for that?
that's interesting. Um, no, well, not all of it was covered
Mm-hmm.
by health insurance. Um, the when polio was a epidemic in the United States in the
Mm-hmm.
50s. I don't know if you will know this or not, but President Roosevelt, Franklin Roosevelt, was a polio survivor,
Mm-hmm.
but he hid his polio from the public view because he didn't want people to think that he was crippled or polio had because of polio or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But he started this thing called March of Dimes, and
Yeah.
that people to put a dime into this bucket, and that was intended to serve kids with polio.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then the vaccine came out in the mid 50s, and everyone was getting vaccinated, so the March of Dimes just kind of shifted to other disabilities and not polio. So prior to it shifting to other disabilities, the March of Dimes picked up a lot of the medical expenses that people had. My parents they had health insurance, but it didn't cover everything. So my dad had to work two different jobs to
Mm-hmm.
pay all the bills. My mother was working two jobs to pay for the bills. And it was a long time before it was all paid off.
Mm-hmm. And the special school, was that like government funded and nonprofit, or did you guys also have to pay for that too?
No, that was considered a public school. So it was
Mm-hmm.
not, we didn't have to pay for that.
Oh, okay. And when you went to the special school, when you went back into public school, did you feel like behind in the curriculum, or were you on par with all the other students, like in the education
I was
wise?
I was not on par with the other students at all. I mean, I never really caught up
Mm-hmm.
until I went to college. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I was a horrible student. I was just a really bad student.
In what way?
Well, I mean, I didn't like school because um, one, I was a standout,
Mm-hmm.
and I wasn't up to the same speed as everybody else. I was socially awkward because I've been institutionalized a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And so any excuse I could get to not go to school, I would use that excuse.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until my um, junior year in high school that I visited this university that had a mission to serve people with disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
It was just coming into being in Wisconsin. And I went and toured it with my mother, and I said, okay, I want to do that. I want to go to college.
Mm-hmm.
And so my senior year, I took all college prep courses, and I did pretty well in those. And so I was admitted into the university at the school that I wanted to go to.
Mm-hmm.
So, but prior to that, I mean, I if I got C's, I was happy, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the I also took a lot of shop courses back
Mm-hmm.
then. I would take like woodworking, metalworking, auto mechanics. I took drafting,
And
all that kind of stuff.
for those courses, were you at a disadvantage because of your disability?
Um, somewhat. I mean, because I didn't have
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't control my body really well, and so I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have the same kind of expertise as others would have when they can control their arm movements, or they could walk alongside something and do whatever they're going to do. But those were the classes that I took because they were easy courses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if you don't mind me asking, when you were in like public school or in college, did people treat you differently or did you just feel that did you just feel different from everybody?
In high school, I was different,
Mm-hmm.
and I know I was different, and people looked at me as being different.
Mm-hmm.
When I went to college, because that university just had this new mission to make it the most accessible campus in the state of Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people with disabilities that were going there.
Mm-hmm.
And so we didn't feel out of place at all.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it's probably pretty typical to any kind of college experience that people have even today, except that back then we lived in dorms, and now today dorms are more like apartments
Mm-hmm.
for people. But um, yeah, college was a much better environment.
Mm-hmm. And besides being wheelchair bound, what other like short or long term effects did you have from polio?
Um, well, what's interesting, there's this thing called post-polio syndrome. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if you've heard of that yet,
No, I
but
haven't.
post-polio syndrome affects people who are probably, well, and later on in life, 60s, 70s, 80s,
Mm-hmm.
and it's described as experiencing polio all over again. You
Mm-hmm.
become fatigued, you become very tired, your bones ache, your body aches all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I experienced some of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, when I've talked to my doctor, I said, I don't know if that's post polio syndrome or if it's just getting older, because it
Mm-hmm.
happens to everybody who gets older. Um, but that is a problem with people with polio survivors today, is that they may experience that post polio syndrome, which is really living polio all over again.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but with me, I mean, yeah, I get fatigued easily. My body does ache. I have muscle loss. Uh, so and then part of the deal too is um, the breathing and the asthma that comes with that. So
Mm-hmm.
we do some preventative stuff to help with the breathing. But because my muscles are affected from just below the heart down, I can't do sit up. I can't do the
Mm-hmm.
traditional exercises that other people can do. I'm fortunate that I found a personal trainer that has created some exercises for me that I can do and to work with strengthening my upper body.
Mm-hmm.
But the um, rest of the body, because it's not being used, it's it's um, it's one of those where it just gets fatigued.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned how like people with that contract polio, they can slowly start getting your senses back. In your case, what did you gain back in your
Well,
mobility and
yeah. Again, keep in mind I was paralyzed from my neck down,
yeah,
so
neck
all I could
down.
do was turn my head from side to side.
Mm-hmm.
What I got back was basically I've got everything from just below the heart up
Mm-hmm.
is probably normal,
Mm-hmm.
and muscles start becoming affected from below the heart down. So um, the further down my legs or
The
whatever,
higher the severity.
yeah, I mean I have very little use. I have no use at all of my legs.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I can't move them. I can't lift them. I can't do anything. And I can because it was getting so painful to walk with braces and crutches, I started using a wheelchair
Mm-hmm.
about 20 years ago. And that
Mm-hmm.
was my choice to use the wheelchair.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what what transpired is I work and I really love my job. But because when I was walking with the crutches and the braces, and I had to hike my hips every time, my hips were grinding on bone. It was bone on bone. And
Mm-hmm.
so it was very painful. And I had to make the decision of either quitting my job and just staying at home or finding a way to move around and continue to work. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's why I chose to use a wheelchair so that I can
Mm-hmm.
continue working.
And
But
speaking of work, was finding a job difficult in those times, or were you able to find a job with your college degree easily?
well, it was very difficult to find a job.
Mm-hmm.
People back then had all kinds of preconceptions about what people with disabilities could or could not do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I must have applied for 100 different jobs and got turned down. Um, when I graduated with an education degree, um, it was kind of one of those last ditch efforts where I applied at a school district and I applied at an organization called Goodwill.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it was kind of a freak thing because I got a job offer at both the school district and at Goodwill the same day.
Mm-hmm.
And I chose to go with Goodwill because I couldn't see myself being a teacher.
Yeah.
So I ended up going to working with Goodwill as a case manager and kind of worked my way up to the ranks to where I'm the CEO now.
Yeah.
So it's
And you're the CEO of the South Texas region, right?
correct from Victoria down to your area, the Rio Grande
Oh,
Valley,
okay. Mm-hmm. And where are you located in right now?
Corpus Christi.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So
Um, and like when you go out in public or when I've heard you're a Rotarian, right?
that's correct.
Mm-hmm. Whenever you go out, like for let's say a Rotary meeting or you go out in public, what's people's reaction when they find out that you had polio before? That you're a survivor of polio?
You know, at least in my club, I've been in that club for over 30 years, so that they all
Mm-hmm.
know me and know that I've had polio. Um, most people, it's interesting because a lot of people think that I'm disabled because they think I'm a veteran, and I'm not a
Mm-hmm.
veteran. And um, and I just make sure that they understand that.
Yeah.
But Um, with Rotarians, it's probably more of interest to them because of the um, mission that Rotary has to eradicate polio worldwide, right? So it kind of strikes a chord with a lot of Rotarians. Um, but it's interesting now because when I go to places, whether it's another Rotary Club or wherever, I mean, I don't think of myself as being disabled. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I don't even, it doesn't even cross my mind. The
Yeah.
only time it crosses my mind is when I go somewhere and it's not accessible and I can't
Mm-hmm.
get in. So
Mm.
basically, they're saying we don't want you coming in by our business because they haven't made it accessible for wheelchair. But because I think I've been around so many places in South Texas, when people see me, at least I don't get the impression they're looking at me as a person with a disability first. They're looking at me as a person,
Mm-hmm.
which is, sometimes I forget that I'm in a wheelchair. So,
And now that we're already talking about Rotary, what do they have to do with polio exactly? What do they do at a local or international level?
well, Rotary, back in the 80s, polio was epidemic around the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so Rotary took on this challenge to eradicate polio worldwide
Mm-hmm.
by buying vaccines and immunizations and
Mm-hmm.
getting them to people, to kids all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
And as it stands right now, there's only two countries.
Pakistan and Afghanistan, right?
That's right. Um, there are only two countries in the world that have active polio.
Mm-hmm.
But what's frightening is that today, some parents think they don't have to immunize their kids against polio.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a frightening thought because polio is highly contagious.
Yeah.
And so all it takes is one person on a plane coming from Pakistan or Afghanistan coming to the
It-
United States and start infecting people.
yeah. And it could become an epidemic again.
That's right. And so, but the vaccine is proven that
Mm-hmm.
it prevents polio from happening. And anyone, I mean, I've had people come up and tell me that the vaccine's a hoax.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going, you gotta, I mean, I don't understand. Look at me. I'm in a wheelchair. It's not a hoax, you
Yeah.
know. Um, the vaccine does prevent polio. So
Mm-hmm.
it's people just think strange things.
Mm-hmm. And well, yeah, I've also heard that like in modern day that like some politicians or something like that, a political party is trying to like make I don't know specifically what they're trying to do, but my mom told me about it and that they're trying to make I forgot if it was like make the I think it was make the polio vaccine like more unnecessary. Like it make it seem more unnecessary to the public.
Yeah, and that's I've heard the same thing, and that's crazy talk. I mean, it
Hmm.
really is crazy talk. Um, and the the same thing is happening with not only just the polio vaccine, but a lot of the immunization that kids have to get as they from birth to 5, and then when they start going to school, they have to get more
Hmm.
immunization.
Yeah.
But the thing that started back again is measles, and
Hmm.
measles is completely preventable with a vaccination that every kid gets after
Yeah.
they're born. But some parents believe that vaccinations cause autism,
Hmm.
and that has been debunked so many times that that's just a rumor that gets picked up and people believe it.
Hmm.
Um, and every time I hear that and someone says it in my presence, I say, look at me. I could be walking with no problems right now if I would have had the vaccine.
Hmm.
And for whatever reason, I didn't get the vaccine. And by the way, I was the only one in my family that got polio.
Hmm.
My None of my brothers or sisters did. But um, yeah, I get frustrated with parents that think that vaccines are
Harmful instead
bad.
of, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like with the COVID-19 vaccine, I would hear people like online saying that there are like chips that they would implant into you through the vaccine
Yes.
to like that the government wanted to control you or something, but it's like it seems too like I don't know, like something that would only happen in the movie.
Exactly. And there are a
Like too
lot of people.
far-fetched.
Yes, right. I mean, there are people that believe that any vaccine, whether it's COVID, whatever,
Hmm.
that they're not necessary and that they don't work or whatever. And it doesn't, people say we're going to let science dictate.
Hmm.
Well, the science does dictate it and says it works. The vaccine
Hmm.
works. Um, my daughter's a scientist at
Oh
University
wow.
Hospital in San Antonio,
Hmm.
and she she was literally working with the COVID vaccine, or with the COVID virus when it first started in the United States.
Hmm.
In South Texas, University Hospital in San Antonio was the only place that they could verify that it was a virus was COVID or not.
Hmm.
And so she told me that the when the vaccine came out, that the vaccine works, you know, and
Hmm.
that she's got proof that it works. And so I'm going, okay, you're the scientist, I'm not. So I believe you, and if you tell me it works, it works,
Hmm.
type of thing. Which is also why like the flu shot, getting a flu shot every year.
Hmm.
Uh, People will say, well, the flu shot you don't always know what strain is going to come out. So will the flu
Yeah.
shot really work? And my daughter told me that they don't always know, but they have a best guess. But if you get it every year, you start building
Hmm.
up immunization to all the various strains of flu.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so vaccines work.
Hmm. And if you had to give any advice to like young adults or parents or children, people in general, what would you tell them?
If I would, when it comes to immunizations, they work.
Hmm.
There are some very few side effects. Very few people have side effects from these
Hmm.
vaccinations, but by and large, they work.
Yeah.
And I would, if I often think about what would have happened had I not gotten polio.
Hmm.
And one, I probably never would have went to college, because no one in my family went to college. I was the only one that went to college.
So it gave you more like a strive to work hard.
Well, yeah, it was interesting. My dad pounded in me throughout childhood that
Hmm.
um, I needed, if I was going to survive, I needed to make a living using my brain and
Hmm.
not my back.
Hmm.
And so uh, there was one of those where he just kept pounding that in, that you need an education, you need
Hmm.
to think about what you're going to do, because you can't physically do manual labor.
Hmm.
Um, but if I wouldn't have had polio, I probably would be doing what a lot of my uh, brothers and sisters did, which is welding, or being a truck driver, or
Hmm.
working manual labor somewhere, construction. Um, so I probably wouldn't have been here. I
Hmm.
certainly wouldn't have met my wife, because I met my wife in college.
Hmm.
Uh, and I wouldn't have my kids that I have. So, um, some things are meant to be, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
And so,
And like having polio or suffering from the effects of it, did it ever like have like was it ever detrimental to your mental health?
I'm sure it was. I mean, when I was in school, whether it's grade school or high school,
Hmm.
um, I I was so angry because I could not do what other kids could do.
Hmm.
Um, and so, yeah, I mean, it had a impact on my mental health,
Hmm.
and it's I'm not even sure how I got through it, um, other than the fact that when I made the decision that I was going to go to college, I mean, that kind of changed everything in my life. Um, but if that wouldn't have happened, if I wouldn't have found that university, or um, if I would have just been um, continuing going down the road, just hope to graduate from high school and find something else to do,
Hmm.
I probably would be in terrible shape in terms of mental health right now.
Yeah. Okay, well, there's only like I only have 2 minutes left in the
Okay.
meeting, so I think right now is a good time to
Okay.
finish it off. Is that okay with you?
Sure, that's fine. So if you want to talk at all anymore about it,
Hmm.
how did you pick up on polio as your topic?
Well, since my mom is a Rotarian, she's always taught me since I was little about polio and what she does because she helps out with like in Brownsville we have like and over here in this Brownsville and the South Padre Island area we have this thing called Ride for Rotary. Have you heard of
Mhm.
it?
I have.
Yeah, and I've been helping out since I was in like second grade, I think. Yeah, but I've known about I've gone to meetings of Rotary and know and met people in her club and the other clubs in Brownsville um since I was probably in like kindergarten.
Okay.
And when I decided that I wanted to do a project for history fair because it's a national competition. Like it starts first at the district level, and
Uh-huh.
then if you get first to second place, you advance to regionals and so on, and up until it goes from district, regionals, state, and the nationals in Washington, D.C.
Well, good luck. I hope you get
Hmm.
there.
Thank you. And um yeah, I saw that she had like kind of like a scar from in Mexico when they like everyone in Mexico has a scar from when they were vaccinated.
Right.
Yeah, that inspired me to learn
Okay.
more about this.
Okay.
So,
Well, good luck to you. And if you
hmm
if you want to talk anymore, you know how to get a hold of me.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye. Good night.